Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking into the disappearance of Yingying Zhang.
Yeah, this is a case that really, I think, speaks to the vulnerability of international students.
Absolutely. And we're going to be using the Case File podcast episode on this as our source material.
Great source.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a really good one. It's a very, very sad story. And I think, just to set the scene for people, like
Yeah.
Yingying Zhang was a 26-year-old visiting scholar from China who was studying at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Hmm.
And it was summer break, so a lot of the students had gone home, and, the campus was pretty quiet.
Yeah, you can almost imagine it like a ghost town.
Uh,
Everyone's gone for the summer, and it can feel kind of eerie, I would imagine.
yeah, and
Well,
so she was still there. She was doing her research, and then one day she just vanished.
and this case, I mean, it's tragic on so many levels, but it also, I think, highlights how easily, like, an ordinary day can just take this dark turn, and how just chance encounters can have, these really devastating consequences.
Yeah, and that's what's so scary about this case is that it could have happened to anyone, really.
Absolutely.
So before we kind of get into the details of Yingying's story, there's an incident that happened just hours before she disappeared that I think is really important to talk about.
Yeah.
There was another student, Emily Hogan, who had a really strange encounter with a man.
Like a chilling parallel almost.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if this was like a practice run for something more sinister.
Like a test to see
Yeah.
what, how potential victims might react.
Right. And so Emily Hogan, she was walking near campus and she was approached by this man in a black sedan. And he actually like flashed a badge at her and said that he is an undercover cop.
Wow.
And he asked her to get in his car.
Oh my gosh.
And thankfully her intuition kicked in and she refused.
That's terrifying. So like that fight or flight response, like
Yeah.
your gut feeling is telling you something's not right.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, what if she had gotten into that car?
Chilling.
So it's
Yeah.
just a really unsettling detail.
So this is hours before Yingying goes missing.
Right. Yeah, just hours before.
Wow.
And so let's talk about Yinging a little bit. Like, imagine being a young woman thousands of miles from home,
Yeah.
in a new country, pursuing your academic dreams, but also feeling the pressure of expectations and maybe a little bit homesick.
Right. I mean, that's a lot to deal with, especially when you're in a new environment, trying to navigate a different culture.
Yeah, and Yingying was described as, very bright and ambitious and really excited about her research, but also, a little bit lost
Hmm.
in this new environment.
Understandable.
And so June 9th, 2017, this was the day that Yingying disappeared.
Okay.
And it started out like any other day. She went to work at her lab, she had a lunch, and then she had an appointment to go view an apartment at this place called One North.
Okay.
It was a popular complex for students,
Mm-hmm.
but she missed the bus. And that's something that, it just seems like such a small, insignificant detail,
Right.
but it might have played a huge role in what happened next.
A twist of fate almost.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she texted the apartment manager to say that she was running late, but as the hours passed, she didn't show up for the appointment.
And then the worry starts to set in, I imagine,
Right. Her friends and colleagues back at the lab, they started to get really worried.
because this is not her to be late or to not show up.
No, this was not like Ying at all.
Okay.
And so that's when the police got involved and they started investigating.
So at this point, they're just trying to piece together, where she might have gone, what might have happened.
Right. And they went to her apartment, they interviewed her friends, and they started trying to, trace her movements.
And I imagine technology played a big role in this, like cell phone records and security footage.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that's so interesting about this case is how much technology plays a role. And so they were able to get some security camera footage from a bus stop near Yingying's lab,
Okay.
and they saw her getting into a black Saturn Astra.
So this is a big break in the case.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this is that the Saturn Astra was a pretty rare car in that area.
So it narrows down their search significantly.
Exactly. And so that detail really helped them to narrow down their suspect pool, and it led them to Brent Christensen.
Okay.
So now we're going to introduce Brent Christensen into the story.
All right.
So Christensen was a former UIUC student. He had been a teaching assistant. He was married, but he was unemployed at the time.
So on the surface, he seems like, kind of a normal guy.
Right.
But as we know, appearances can be deceiving.
Absolutely. And And the evidence that they started to uncover against him was really disturbing.
Like what kind of evidence?
Well, during his initial interview with the FBI, his alibi kept shifting.
Oh, that's never a good sign.
Yeah, and they also found that his car had been really suspiciously cleaned,
Okay.
and there were some bloodstains in his apartment.
Oh, wow. And then they uncovered his online activity.
Oh.
And this is where things get really creepy.
What do you mean?
He had been visiting a forum called Abduction 101.
That's disturbing.
And he had purchased a duffel bag shortly before Yingying's disappearance.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, on the surface, he seemed cooperative with the investigation, but his digital footprint painted a much different picture.
Like a double life almost.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's really chilling to think about.
It's like a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
Yeah, and so this is where the story takes another really unexpected turn. Christensen's girlfriend Megan becomes a key player in the investigation.
Oh, wow. So this is where things get even more complicated.
Yeah.
You've got this loyalty to a loved one versus a moral obligation to do what's right.
Right, and she's put in this incredibly difficult position.
I can't even imagine what she must have been going through.
So they were attending Yingying's vigil.
So sad.
And Christensen actually confesses to Megan that he's a serial killer.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
That's insane. So we'll pick up with that in part 2.
I can't wait.
All right, see you then.
So he just confesses to her like that.
Well, not just like that. He was acting really strangely at the vigil,
Okay.
and he was clearly trying to kind of draw attention to himself.
So almost like he wanted to get caught.
Yeah, it's really weird. He knew that the FBI was watching him,
Right.
but he was still doing things that were really suspicious.
Like what?
Like he turned off the location tracking on his phone.
Oh, wow.
He was using a VPN to hide his online activity.
So he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, and he was even bragging to Megan about being a serial killer.
Oh, my God. That's so creepy.
And, it makes you wonder if his confession was genuine or if he was just trying to manipulate her.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that he was just trying to scare her.
Right.
And control her.
And it's possible that he was just completely delusional.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what was going on in his head.
So while all of this is happening, the FBI is still working on building their case against him.
Right. They need more than just suspicion.
Exactly. They need concrete evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where Megan's decision to cooperate with the FBI becomes really crucial.
Wow. So she agreed to wear a wire.
Yeah. And it must have been such a difficult decision for her
Oh, absolutely.
to go against someone that you care about.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge betrayal.
But she knew that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, she had to do it for Yingying.
And so she started secretly recording her conversations with Christensen.
And what did they catch him saying?
Well, they caught him trying to explain away all the evidence.
Like
He was blaming Megan for the bloodstains in his apartment. And he was saying that the duffel bag wasn't his.
So he's still lying.
Oh, yeah. He was trying to weave this whole web of lies.
And he thought he could get away with it.
Yeah, but he was really just digging himself a deeper hole.
And all of this is being recorded.
Right. And so the FBI, they had enough to arrest him.
Finally.
They arrested him on his birthday, June 30th.
What a birthday present.
Yeah, it was his 28th birthday.
Wow.
And they charged him with kidnapping, resulting in death and lying to federal agents.
And I think they even brought a cadaver dog to his apartment.
Yeah, they did. And it alerted in the bathroom.
Which is where he said he killed her.
Yeah.
That's chilling.
So the trial began in June of 2019.
Okay.
And it was moved out of Champaign because of all of the media attention.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Yingying's family, they came from China to attend the trial.
Wow. I can't imagine what they were going through.
It must have been so difficult for them.
Just heartbreaking.
And then the defense team, they did something really unexpected.
What was that?
They admitted that Christensen had killed Yingying,
Oh, wow.
but they said that he shouldn't get the death penalty.
So they were trying to save his life.
Yeah, they were arguing that his history of alcoholism and his exposure to BDSM should be considered as mitigating factors.
So they were basically saying that he wasn't fully in control of his actions. Right. But the prosecution, they had a lot of evidence against him.
They did. They had his DNA, they had his internet searches, they had the things that he had told Megan.
And Megan's testimony was really powerful.
Yeah, she described how Christensen had talked about his fantasies of kidnapping and killing women.
That's terrifying.
And she also said that he had taken her to the location where he had disposed of Yingying's body.
Oh, my God.
So after a long trial, the jury found Christensen guilty on all counts.
That's a relief.
Yeah, but they couldn't agree on the death penalty.
Oh, wow.
So he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of release.
So justice was served, but not in the way that they had hoped.
Yeah, and Yingying's family, they pleaded with Christensen to tell them where her body was.
So they could bring her home.
Yeah,
That's all they wanted.
but he refused.
That's so cruel.
And what they didn't know at the time was that he had already confessed to what he had done with her body.
Oh, really? As part of a plea deal or
Y-
something?
Yeah, as part of an immunity agreement.
Wow. And what did he say?
We'll talk about that in part 3.
Okay, so what did he do with her body?
Well, as part of this immunity agreement, Christensen revealed that he had dismembered Yingying's body and placed her remains in garbage bags.
Oh my
And
God.
then he threw them in a dumpster outside his apartment building.
That's just horrific. I mean, the level of disrespect and dehumanization is just astounding.
And what makes this even more tragic is that the dumpster had already been emptied by the time the FBI got there.
So there's no chance of recovering her remains.
No, the contents of the dumpster were taken to a landfill and compacted and buried under tons of garbage.
That's devastating for her family. I mean, not even be able to have a proper burial to say goodbye.
Yeah, it's unimaginable the pain that they must have gone through.
So what was their reaction when they learned the truth?
They issued a statement condemning Christensen's actions and expressing their hope that he would suffer for what he had done.
Understandable.
But even in the face of such unimaginable grief, they found the strength to create something positive.
That's amazing how.
They started Yingying's Fund to support international students and their families.
That's a beautiful tribute to her memory.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see them turn their pain into something that can help others.
So I think it's important to kind of step back for a moment and reflect on what we've learned from this case.
Yeah.
You know, it's a story that really highlights the dangers that international students can face.
Absolutely. And also the importance of vigilance, and being aware of your surroundings.
Yeah. And the role that technology plays in these investigations, both for the investigators and for the perpetrators.
Right.
And I think it also raises questions about our justice system.
Mhm.
Is life in prison without parole really enough for a crime like this?
That's a tough question.
It is, and there's no easy answer.
But I think it's a conversation that we need to have. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the disappearance of Yingying Zhang.
It's been a heavy one.
Yeah, it's a very sad story, but I think it's important to remember Yingying and to honor her memory.
Yeah, and to continue to support international students and their families.
And to never forget the importance of justice and accountability.
Thanks for listening, everyone.